Trust the guy.
What's this at? Yeah. Listen.
I think I just.
It's still like right out.
It's like pre-herb.
I'll just face it, just take it outside, stop it. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. Take a bath. Get extra.
Goes with sound systems. Yeah.
Is it a microphone? That's the one you use. I got it. All right, thanks for having a little patience with us as we solve some audio problems. Welcome to the January 6th, 2026 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. We will begin with introductions. I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
Sure, I'm Rusty Brown. I'm an architect and was nominated by the AIA.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and developer, and I was also nominated by the AIA.
Emily Hazen, preservationist and designer, nominated by City Planning.
I'm Bree Saman, interior designer and project manager, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Chris McGinnis, I'm a forensic architect, and I was nominated by the mayor's office.
And I'm Larry Sykes, I'm an architect, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
And I'm Brittany Bryant. I'm Denver Landmark Preservation staff. So before we begin, I would like to just ask commission or staff if you have any general comments that you'd like to make before I ask about any proposals. Are there any folks on the commission that need to recuse themselves for any agenda items today?
Yes, I'll need to recuse myself for the consent agenda for item 2025-COA-1096.
Okay, thanks, Larry.
And I need to recuse myself for the 2 design review projects on Welton Street.
Okay, thanks, Rusty. All right. So we do have one meeting record for approval. This is from our December 16th meeting. Are there any corrections or comments that commissioners need to make? All right, then I think the meeting records are approved. We are ready to move on to audio tips. So this is tips for those of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your device, from which you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu that lets you add background noise suppression and testing your speaker and microphone to adjust their output volumes. And then for those of you presenting or making public comment, when it's your turn to speak, you can unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. And from there, you can also expand the menu next to the microphone to reveal additional options such as selecting your speaker and microphone devices, and again, adjusting their volume output. If you're still having audio challenges, we suggest that you switch to phone for audio. Now, this is our public comment period. This is for comments either generally about historic preservation in general, or any items on the consented review agenda, design review agenda, or our discussion items for today, or business items. We do have a public hearing on our agenda today. We will be opening up for public comments at that point for that particular agenda item. So if you have any comment that you would like to make and you are not part of an applicant team for any of the other projects that we have before us today, or if you'd like to make a comment in general, this is your time to do so. If you are joining us virtually, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom to let us know that you would like to speak, and then we'll call upon you. If you are joining by phone, you can dial *9 from your keypad to raise your hand. If you're having difficulty with either of these options, you can email landmark@denvergov.org, and please provide your name and phone number so we can recognize you in the Zoom chat. All right, are there anyone here with us today in person who would like to make a comment at this time? All right, is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment? Doesn't look like it. All right, great, we can move on to our consent agenda. So I think Larry will ask you to leave the room in a moment, and then you can call him back in when we are done. So consent agenda items are routine projects that Landmark staff has determined meet the design guidelines for the Denver landmark structures and districts and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. We can approve these items as a group, but if any commissioners would like to remove one of these items for discussion as a design review agenda item, we can do so. Our two consent agenda items are application number 2025-COA-1096 at 2975 North Irving Street in the Allen M. Ghost Historic District. And then application 2025-TAXC-039 at 3147 North Humatia Street or also known as the Alexander Cowie House. Commissioners, do you have, would you like to remove any of these items for further discussion? Right. If not, then would someone like to make a motion to approve them?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Great. So we are done with our consent agenda. We'll wait for Larry to rejoin us. All right, this is our public hearing. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this is a chance, if you would like to make a comment on this particular item, we will open it up for you to do so after we've heard from the applicant and staff. I am officially opening the public hearing now at 1:09. This is for the application number 2025L-007 at 1555 North Grant Street, also known as the Knights of Columbus. So we will hear from the applicant today first, after which we may question the applicant. And then we will hear from staff, after which commissioners may question staff. And then we will have the public comment period where anyone who would like to make a comment has up to 3 minutes to do so. Then we'll hear from staff for any clarifications if needed before we move into a deliberation and then have a motion and vote. So we will hear from the applicant first, and I believe Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval will be speaking.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, thank you.
Thanks. Sorry I wasn't able to join you in person. I've been in back-to-back meetings and I have committee following this. So I'm just across the street at the city and county building, but there with you in spirit. I think you all might be very familiar with this application. You sent it to City Council Committee, and I picked it up because if you may not know me very well, I love land use. So Councilmember Hines, whose council district this is in, and I have brought forward this revised application for landmark designation of 1555 Grant Street on behalf of the community and the Knights of Columbus in Knights of Columbus. This application is a collaborative compromise that preserves what is historically significant without limiting the development potential of the parking lot. The designation continues to recognize two contributing primary structures, 1928 Buell Event Hall and the 1963 Milan Event Hall. The L-shaped parking lot is reclassified as a non-contributing accessory structure because it does not reflect the site's historic, architectural, or cultural significance. Changes to the parking lot would still be subject to landmark review, and it allows compatible new development to replace the parking lot in the future. The designation boundary remains unchanged. The commission previously requested additional documentation of the 1963 Event Hall's double T structural system, and this revised submittal includes the additional photos requested. The proposal to landmark the Knights of Columbus building at 1555 Grant Street has received the support of RNOs, community members, and as you all remember, you unanimously recommended its approval at the December 2025 meeting. By preserving the event halls, we protect a tangible link to Denver's social and architectural history while preserving the flexibility of the site to meet the needs of future generations. And I respectfully ask for your recommendation of approval for this application. And just to give a little bit more insight, we had a robust conversation at committee regarding the parking lot. And I felt that the application would fail if it made it forward to City Council designating the parking lot and knowing that nothing could happen on that parking lot in the future. Many of my colleagues expressed a lot of concern, and this would be the first time that a parking lot would have this type of designation. So we wanted to be flexible with the Knights of Columbus because we still want them to be around and still be part of our community. And I personally called the assessor's office and talked to the assessor about some of the issues that the Knights of Columbus were dealing with. And that's when I decided to move forward as the applicant and resubmit this application to you all so that it had a good chance of being approved at City Council. And I'm on here until 1:30 when I have to go to committee to answer any questions that you may have. And the floor is now all yours. Thank you so much for your service to Denver.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Councilwoman Sandoval? All right, thank you. I think we're ready to hear from staff then.
Okay, so this should look fairly familiar to you since you last heard this case on December 2nd. So basically today coming forward with a revised application that, as stated by the councilwoman, will keep the same boundaries, but no longer have the parking lot as a contributing feature. So other basic information stays the same. The applicant team is then also joined by council members Sandoval and Hines are now part of the applicant team as well, since they assisted kind of reworking this designation. Next slide. So you can see here, the boundary remains the same as the previous designation that you reviewed. It's simply that now the parking lot will no longer be a contributing feature, but it is still part of the designation. So any new construction on the parking lot would still have to go to the commission for approval. And it would still be that we need to make sure that any new construction there is not detracting from the historic construction. So nothing large, very large, or that would really block the views of the historic would be allowed under our guidelines. So you'll still have purview over what happens in the lot, but now there could be some other options for the lot, as long as any new construction there is compatible with the two historic buildings. So same process as before. In order to be eligible, it needs to maintain integrity, be more than 30 years old or exceptionally important, meet at least 3 of 10 criteria, and you need to consider the context. So in this case, we have B for recognized person, C for the architectural style, D for the architect, E for technical innovation. So you can see here the historic development of the site. It has changed quite a bit through the years. So there you see on the left is the historic Fleming Mansion. That is no longer on the site. It was bought by the Knights of Columbus to serve as a hall. You can see there then on the 1897 map, you can see when it was still the mansion in front and then it was a stables to the rear. You can then see in the 1929 illustration, that is the Fleming Mansion at the top, which was then already part of the Knights of Columbus Hall. And then you can see they did a major remodel, turning that, what was the rear stable, into a lodge hall and connecting it to the main building. And then you can see there in the 1967 Sanborn map with the former mansion has been removed, but you can see that the form of that lodge hall is still intact. And then you can see that a new meeting facility has been added there at the rear, at the bottom of the lot. So the buildings being proposed for designation for the significant association with the Knights of Columbus and Denver's Catholic community, as well as the general public that which use this facility. The hall hosted not only events of the Catholic community, including a lot of Polish community and the Czech community, Catholic women, but also included a lot of political events and other lectures. Was a common place for politicians when running for office to do an event in the hall. So really kind of whole community using the hall. Next slide. Then during World War II, the event hall was very significant as the kind of base for the USO in Denver. So serving a large amount of soldiers that came through Denver, with Denver being kind of a major hub with a lot of federal offices. And then also hosted a lot of activities to provide assistance for soldiers during World War II, such as collecting Christmas cookies for soldiers. Next slide. And then finally, it's also associated with the post-war population growth in Denver and nationwide, an increase in interest in fraternal orders. And with this, the Denver Hall needed additional space and wanted, when they tore down the old mansion that was not working for their needs anymore, provided then a parking lot for people driving in from elsewhere in Denver to events here, and then constructed a new facility. So this is article of the dedication of their new Knights of Columbus home in 1963. So then, also being proposed for designation under criterion C as embodying the distinctive visible characteristics of a style, in this case mid-century modern, with its clean lines, simple flat roof, smooth kind of brick exterior and concrete, and lack of embellishment. Also being proposed for significance with its architecture, looking at John Milan, who was a major Colorado architect who designed approximately 700 projects in Colorado, a mix of single-family, multi-unit, retail, shopping centers, office buildings, schools, motels, and warehouses, and did a lot of work specifically with the Catholic Archdiocese of Denver. So he designed numerous churches and parish halls, and often was looking for how he could use new materials and introduce technical innovations, which he was doing here with the use of pre-stressed double T concrete in the construction of the building. What we can determine, this is a pretty early usage and likely the first in Denver. And then finally, significant under criterion E for containing elements of design, engineering, materials, craftsmanship, which are a significant innovation or technical achievement. So here, that use kind of innovation, we saw this a lot in the construction industry after World War II with material shortages. People started to look for new technical innovations, with this also a lot of growth of concrete industry. And here you have the use of the pre-stressed concrete double T framing members. While these were really become common today, they were definitely more cutting edge when this was done, and particularly in the way they were used, using them kind of as both a support structural element as well as a decorative element, the way that they are visible on the exterior walls, also being used for the ceiling and the floor, and being able to kind of adapt this new technical type of use of double T concrete framing to an office building, or in this case a lodge, but like an office building, something that had typically been used more for industrial or road construction. So kind of the new way of using this technology. So then, integrity. There have been minimal changes to the site during the period of significance from 1928 to 1982. So you can see here, we have the 1928 event hall. It is pretty intact. You can see the building at the top is the historic when it was still attached. While the mansion was removed, no significant changes have been made to that hall beyond some window alterations. So that's analysis kind of showing that. And then you also have the newer 1963 building, and the only significant change here has been the addition of a porch, but it's a pretty simple, modern, minimal porch, I think very sympathetic to the building, and staff does not feel that that has any significant impact on its integrity either. So, considering the historic context, history of the Knights of Columbus, the evolution of the property, and the changes to the neighborhood. And ignore the last bullet point. That was part of the previous one. I thought I removed all those references in this slide deck, and I did not. So we are no longer arguing for that tie to car culture and parking lots, because now the parking lot is going to be a non-contributing element of the site. So next slide. So the period of significance is proposed, same as before, to run from 1928, which is when the kind of rehabbed, converted stable into a lodge hall was dedicated. So you see newspaper article there on the dedication of that new hall, through then the 100-year anniversary of the Knights of Columbus, which was celebrated with a major parade in 1982 and included celebrations here, as it says, a parade followed by dinner and musical entertainment at the Knights of Columbus at 1555 Grant Street. So that seemed like kind of a good closing date for wrapping up this significance. We have gotten one new letter in support since the changes were made to the designation. That is from Historic Denver, and they are supportive of the revisions to change the parking lot to a non-contributing element of the designation. So, summary, it's over 30, meets at least 3 criteria. In this case, it's proposed to be 4, has integrity, and we've discussed the context. So, recommending that it is forwarded to City Council. So, suggested motion to recommend approval and forward to City Council the amended landmark designation. So I've given this definitely pretty short since you just saw this designation previously, but I am happy if you have any questions about anything, want me to elaborate more since I ran through it quickly, just let me know.
Thank you, Abby. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I just have one clarification. Are you guys certain it's pre-stress concrete, the double T's, and not just precast double T? Because pre-stress typically has a little camber in it, and I know those are usually wall panels, and I just want to, I don't know who made that determination one way or another, and I just want to make sure you guys just.
That was the consultant who was doing the research for the designation,
Okay.
and there were a lot of articles included that I say I am not an expert, so I too would probably not recognize the difference, but that was in the designation and supported by research in the designation.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Right. Thank you, Abby. All right, we are ready to ask the public if they would like to make any comments. Is there anyone here? Well, let me go over how to do so when you're speaking through Zoom. So you, again, click the hand raise button in Zoom to let us know that you would like to make a comment. You can dial *9 on your keypad if you're joining by phone to raise your hand. If you're having trouble with those options, please email us at landmark@denvergov.org, giving your name and phone number so we can recognize you. When you are speaking, please provide your name, and for this designation hearing, we will also need your address. Please clearly state your position on the proposal, and those of you joining or representing an interest of the state organization or other person, please let us know that you're representing them, and if you have some sort of interest in the affected property. You will have up to 3 minutes to provide your comment, and we will not be taking questions or comments to the applicant themselves. This is just to let us know your position on this designation. Is there anyone here in person who would like to make a comment? Yes, if you'll please join us at the table. And again, if you begin with your name and address when you're ready.
Thank you. My name's Bill Moon. I'm an architect, 1620 Logan Street, Denver, Colorado. Denver resident, neighbor, property owner, community member. Practiced architecture, urban planning, historic preservation for over 38 years here in Denver. I've had the distinct privilege to have worked on some of Denver's most treasured landmarks, including DNF Clock Tower, Union Station, the Tramway Building, which is now Hotel Teatro, and the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception. In fact, our office is 1 block away, located in the historic Fisher Mansion. So we're very adept at historic preservation and what should be landmarked in Denver. I don't come to this hearing lightly. However, this designation gives me great pause, and I'm speaking against designation. I appreciate the extensive historic research. My comments tonight are not about the importance of the Knights of Columbus or their service to Denver. Their contributions are real and meaningful. My concern is whether this property itself meets Denver's legal and policy threshold for landmark designation, and whether the application stretches the criteria beyond the intended purpose. As I said, the Knights of Columbus as an organization acknowledge all of the background and history that they brought to this property and to our community. I believe that the application asserts strong integrity, but the factual records show otherwise. The original Fletcher Mansion, the namesake structure, was obviously demolished in '63. The front lawn, historic setting, and original urban relationship were erased and replaced with the parking lot, and the windows of the 28 Hall have been substantially altered or infilled. The site today is a hybrid of unrelated eras and functions. What remains is not an intact historic property, but a heavily altered institutional campus whose most historically evocative building no longer exists. I'm glad to hear the parking lot was taken out. I think that was a major overreach on contributing. And while I have comments on that, I'll put that to the side because of time. I believe the 1963 Hall architectural claims are way overstated. While it describes it as a rare and innovative example of mid-century modern design, the record does not support a landmark level distinction. While Mr. Milan was prolific and competent as an architect, not every competent work is landmark worthy. Pre-stressed or precast is what I believe it is. Double T construction is widely used in utilitarian. The building's form, scale, and detailing are modest and not exceptional. Innovation alone is not sufficient. It must rise to a level of exceptional architectural distinction. As an architect who designed many award-winning projects, I can clearly state the building simply does not rise to the high-level bar that a Denver landmark project in Denver should aspire to. I also think the site itself and the surrounding neighborhood is something to really look at. Denver faces intense pressure around housing, land use, and adaptive reuse.
Thank you. Your time is up now, so.
Okay. Well, in conclusion, I recommend that you not support the designation of this property. Thank you.
Did you want to speak? Yes, please.
My name's Mark Mylan. I'm John's son. I live at 2835 South Monaco Parkway. First, I'd like to say, on behalf of my family, we're supportive of the project and we hope for approval. And questions about the pre-stressed double T. Well, fabricated by Colorado Pre-Stress Company, which specializes in double T's. Jack Perlmutter and his brother Leonard Perlmutter. Later in my career, I got to know Jack and such, but I'm 100% sure they're pre-stressed. So, any questions of me?
I don't think we'll be taking any questions for you, but we appreciate hearing from you. If there's anything else you'd like to say, we do still have some
We're
remaining.
supportive and we hope you folks approve the project.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here in person who would like to?
Yes. Sean Esteby. I am a current owner and board member with the Home of Denver Knights of Columbus. I spoke to you all previously last month, so I don't really want to run through a lot of the details necessarily, but of course, we have been there since 1919. We do believe this building warrants the landmark support and does meet the legal criteria. We spent over 3 years working on this application with the Landmark Commission, as you all might remember. And again, we support the landmark position and gratefully or respectfully request that you all approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you get your
Certainly. 682 Stage Station Way, Lafayette, Colorado 80026. Thank you.
Right, I don't believe there's anyone else here in person. So I'll ask if there's anyone here online joining us who would like to make a comment. Looks like maybe one person has their hand raised. Jay, when you are ready, you can unmute yourself and please give us your name and address.
Sure, perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jay Homestead, Senior Director of Preservation Advocacy at Historic Denver, located at 1420 Ogden Street, Denver, Colorado, 80218. Historic Denver supports the revisions to the landmark designation of 1555 North Grant Street, a site that reflects more than a century of architectural and civic history. The 1928 Temple Buell designed hall and the 1963 mid-century modern addition by John Milan together illustrate key moments in Denver's architectural evolution and the development of this corridor. The property also holds deep community significance as a major USO center during World War II, serving hundreds of service members and embodying a lasting legacy of service and volunteerism. Historic Denver believes this site meets the criteria for local designation. Landmarking this site will ensure these interconnected architectural and social histories are protected for future generations. For these reasons, Historic Denver respectfully urges approval of the designation and recommendation to City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else joining us virtually who would like to make a comment? Does it look like it? All right, I am closing the public hearing now at 1:36. And do we need to hear any staff clarifications?
I'll just give a little recap or saying that, a property can have significantly changed over time and still be eligible for designation. So staff feel like this property does meet all the criteria while the mansion has been removed. It shows the evolution still over time from 1928 through the mid-century, and we believe that that evolution over time is its own really significant story. It's been in its current form since the 1960s. So just that, it's not like the changes are new changes. So we believe it, conveys a significant evolution over time. And that also while the 1963 building may be, a low scale, fairly simple building, we do believe its construction is significant and unique for the moment when it was done. And buildings don't have to be large and elaborate in order to be eligible to be a landmark. Often, the smaller, simpler buildings can, be just as important with their significance as well.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, so as it's clear, we've seen this before, but with slight changes now to this designation being brought back before us. Do you have any thoughts on this?
This change increases my support.
Yeah, I think it brings up some interesting tensions in landmark tensions combined with kind of some of the challenges that we inherit from like mid-century changes to a lot of these properties, and I think that removing the parking lot kind of helps address that while maintaining what is still remaining. That I agree with what I voted for last time is significant.
Thank you, Larry. Any other thoughts? I guess I'll just say I'm glad that the boundary remains the same so that review can occur for any changes to the whole property so that the historic buildings are still visible and treated respectfully. There's no other comments. Would someone like to make a motion? And maybe we can have the motion back up on the screen. Suggested motion. Would someone like to make that motion?
Sure, I'll do that. I move to recommend approval and forward to City Council the amended landmark designation for 1555 North Grant Street, application number 2025L-007, based on the landmark ordinance criteria B, C, D, and E, citing as findings of fact for this recommendation, the application form, public testimony, and staff report.
Thank you, Rusty. Do we have a second? I'll second. Thanks, Bree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Right, the motion passes and it will be forwarded to City Council. Thank you. All right, we are now moving on to our design review agenda items. These items require individual consideration by the commission and are reviewed and discussed separately before a motion and vote is taken. I will announce each one by its address. And we've already heard that Rusty is recusing himself, so he's leaving the room at the moment. We'll hear from staff first about the application and their recommendation, after which commissioners may question staff. Then we'll hear from the applicant, and they will have up to 10 minutes to provide their presentation, after which commissioners may question them. And then we'll hear from staff if we have any needed clarifications before we move into a deliberation and motion and vote. So our these two design review items are related. First, we're going to hear about application 2025-LM Demo-341 for 2727 to 2729 Welton Street in the Five Points Historic Cultural District. And we'll hear from Jesse.
Great. So this is 2729 Welton Street. The building is in the Five Points Historic Cultural District, and that district has a period of significance that is prior to and including 1964. Next slide. So the building was constructed in 1899 and is a non-contributing building to the district. The applicant is requesting to demolish the existing structure. Landmark staff is recommending conditional approval of the request, and I'll spend the next few slides going over that request and our recommendations. So next slide. So pictured here, Sanborn map showing kind of the evolution of the site. This property was originally constructed, as I said, in 1899 as a single family residential structure. By 1951, the building had been converted into a commercial use through the addition of storefronts to the front of the original residence. And then the property is located within the boundaries of the Five Points Historic Cultural District along Welton Street, which is a main street area, and this is considered a main street structure. Next slide. So the property, the Five Points Historic Cultural District ordinance identifies 9 contributing buildings, so only a few buildings are contributing within this district. 2729 is not one of those buildings. It is obviously not listed as a contributing building, but is classified as a Main Street character building, as I went over previously. Character buildings are defined as commercial buildings located or constructed during the period of significance for the district, which is prior to and including 1964. The Five Points Historic Cultural District design standards and guidelines encourage the retention and reuse of character buildings when feasible. However, the guidelines note that integrity is not a specific objective for these buildings. Additional flexibility may be granted for the demolition of these buildings. Next slide. So the property owner did obtain a structural assessment of the building, which identified significant deficiencies in the foundation, walls, and roof. Based on the building's non-contributing status and documented structural issues, the applicant is requesting total demolition of this structure. Landmark preservation staff support the demolition request. However, under section 30-6 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, issuance of a demolition permit is contingent upon approval by the commission of a replacement structure. And we'll wait until the slides come back up. Sorry, it's fine. We move on to the next slide. So this structure is a non-contributing resource, and the applicant has shown that the structural conditions prevent its reuse. The 5 points guidelines offer flexibility for character buildings, and the landmark ordinance permits demolition of non-contributing structures as shown in section 30-6 PI and intent statements 3H, 3O, and 3T. Next slide. So staff is recommending conditional approval of the application with the condition that the LPC review and approve a replacement structure prior to demolition of the existing structure on the site.
Thank you, Jesse. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I always get confused, and maybe it's a gray area, but when we have a historic district, isn't all the buildings within that district contributing to that district?
Not necessarily. So there are criteria which the designation calls out in this specific district. Well, in typical historic district, architecture is one of those, and that can lead to listing properties as contributing or non-contributing. But 5 Points is unique because it's a cultural district. So it's not necessarily tied to the building itself, but the culture and the history related to the site.
So who makes that determination?
That was made, the determination was made through survey work in the original 5 Points designation. I don't have that 5 Points designation. Brittany was involved in that, so she is our in-house expert on the 5 Points historic cultural district.
I guess my question is that facade of that building on the main street seems like it would be contributing to that historic cultural district. Is that not accurate?
So when 5 Points was originally designated, it was designated with 7 contributing buildings, and it was originally designated as the Welton Street Commercial Corridor. This was wildly unpopular with the community because it wasn't seen as recognizing the actual history of the neighborhood. But as Jesse also already indicated, it was not designated for its architecture. So it is not an architecturally significant district. It is designated for its association with the African American community. And each of the buildings that are recognized as contributing have really strong associations with the African American community. Now, that is not to say that like each building along this corridor don't. This was the Harlem of the West. The African American community was forced to live in this neighborhood historically. It was historically a residential neighborhood, and commercial storefronts were put on each building. And if you spend like any amount of time researching it, you can find historically African American businesses in all of these buildings. But the ones that were designated as contributing, they wanted to be designated as contributing. So we were not telling these people that they had to be contributing buildings. They told us that they wanted to be recognized and that they wanted their buildings preserved. So when we changed the name to the 5 Points, that was in response to listening to the community and responding to what they wanted, and also adding those 2 additional buildings to the district. So that was responding to the community's needs and making sure we were listening to them and ensuring we're preserving what they told us was significant. So 5 Points is a very unique district, and the fact that it is not designated for its architecture. When we wrote the guidelines, we did want to preserve some of those Main Street character buildings because 5 Points does have significant challenges in terms of its zoning. It has CMX 8 and 5 zoning. However, you know, they are not contributing buildings, so we do allow facadism in this district essentially. We haven't seen a lot of traction with people actually taking those types of projects on because the buildings have a lot of challenges of like, this person actually did a structural assessment and see if they could actually do it. We've had this project in, Jesse, I don't know how long have we had it?
3 or 4 years.
Yeah, several years. They have tried to explore options with this building to see what they could do. It just hasn't been possible. So, I mean, we see it as a success that we're seeing a smaller scale building, even though it is like a 1 to 2 story building here, even though we're kind of losing the historic building. So we're taking the win where we can. It's a unique district
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
just kind of an odd,
Yeah.
it's an odd one. That staff typically, I would think would support it, I guess.
And we have one other cultural district, Alma, that was just recently designated. So that's our other cultural district that we have.
Yeah, and I appreciate the background. I'm obviously not as familiar with it as you are.
Alma is different too, though, in that each of those buildings have an inventory form, and me, Karen, Abby sat down and was like, what is the significant elements on each one of these buildings in La Alma? So even La Alma is treated very differently from how.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen where the, you know, the Main Street projects and historic districts, you know, throughout, you know, different, not only the state and other states, that they'll save the facade as best they can, right? And then build whatever behind it basically to make it modernized. So I don't know if that was explored or not, but just curious.
Yeah, we have guidelines specifically for facades in this district.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesse. We are ready to hear from the applicants. You would begin with your name and then you have 10 minutes.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Wade. I'm with Semple Brown and I'm one of the architects on the project. I don't have a ton to add to this without being redundant. But you know, as you've seen the evidence of the structural report, you know, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of opportunity to reuse this project despite, you know, the long efforts of trying to do so. I think that's all I have for this one.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Or it was, I mean, to follow up on the last, was facadism specifically considered, and if so, can you explain?
Yes, but probably not feasible.
Based
Because,
on,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
follow up based on, be more precise.
Can you clarify that a little bit more?
I think the idea of reusing the existing facade.
Yeah.
Just the facade itself.
I just don't think it's quite feasible for you know, the uses that we want to do on this site, from like the ownership perspective. I think that it's beneficial to increase some scale a little bit, and
It's more of an ownership driven thing. It's not necessarily a structural driven thing.
correct. Well, structurally, it's not great either. The foundations are crumbling.
It's mass masonry on the facade.
Any other questions? Right, okay, thank you. All right, any further things to hear from staff about this?
I would just reiterate that this is a non-contributing building to the district. It is a Main Street building, but it is still non-contributing and our ordinance does allow for demolition. The guidelines that are specific to 5 points also call out how the intent isn't the architecture, it's the culture and the history that's attributed to this historic district. And that does allow some flexibility for alterations or demolition of non-contributing structures.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, so commissioners, what did you think I'm sorry,
Just want to acknowledge that person.
I still
we
can't.
hear you.
Still just, this person is not allowed to be acknowledged, correct?
Oh, no, that we have public comment at the beginning of the meeting for these sorts of projects. We did receive a letter from the RNO, which I believe is more oriented towards the phase one replacement building. So
Just wanted to acknowledge.
All right.
thanks. All right, so commissioners, what did you all think?
I think it is an interesting case. I do support the application for demolition, and I think we're gonna get our swipe at what's next, and that is the conditional approval. And that they're, and preserve the character of the street, whatever is approved. So I don't really have an issue.
I think, I'd just like to add that what Chris was getting at, I've personally, while I understand the background of this particular district and how unique it is and unique in how it's treating the historic resources within it, it's always been a little troubling because while it might encourage preserving these character buildings, they are not the same as contributing buildings, and we really kind of have not as much say in that other than encouragement. So I think it's unfortunate that there's not an ability to explore more robust ways of keeping this particular building. But I think the way this historic district has been structured from its designation at the very beginning, we have to respect that and follow what it's been outlined to accomplish.
Given what's been presented in this submission, I do appreciate it mentioned that the applicants did, originally their intent was to reuse the building and do more of a revitalization project, which I think we always appreciate seeing that. But given the report that we received of the structural integrity of the building, it is evident that it just isn't able to be reused in this case, at least again, as it's presented to us as a entire building, not just piecemealing and talking about the facade or different aspects of it, but as the whole building itself. I can see why they are submitting it as a demolition request.
Any other thoughts?
Similar to you, I'm troubled that this neighborhood with its history has less protections for the architecture, but I do understand the context. And I think that for me, the structural issues, necessitate or at least encourage the demolition. Allow it for it to be supported.
All right, doesn't seem like anyone has any further comments to make at the time, so would someone like to make a motion?
I'm happy to.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
I move to approve with conditions application 2025-LMDEMO-341 for the total demolition of a non-contributing structure at 2727-2729 Welton Street as per section 30-6 sub 6 sub B Romanet 1 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, intent statements 3H, 3O, 3T, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information in the staff report with the condition that the Landmark Preservation Commission review and approve a replacement structure prior to demolition of the existing structure.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Larry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? All right, the motion has passed for conditional approval. All right, we are ready to move on to the next design review, which is the same property, 272729 Welton Street, application 2025-COA-1120. for the new construction phase 1.
So as a reminder, this is 2729 Welton Street. It is located in the Five Points Cultural Historic District with a period of significance of prior to and including 1964. Next slide. The building was constructed in 1899 and is non-contributing to the district. The applicant is requesting to construct a new structure on the lot to replace the existing structure. The project's scope under review is for mass form and context phase 1. The proposal was reviewed by the RNO and a copy of those comments are included in the application materials for your review. They do support the proposal. And then staff is recommending approval of the request for phase 1 mass form and context. And we'll go over the findings of staff over the next few slides. Next slide. So pictured here are the existing and proposed site plans and the first floor and second floor plans. Next slide. Pictured here are the elevations for the new building. Next slide. And here are section drawings of the new building. Next slide. And then additional 3-dimensional drawings showing this structure along with some of the existing structures along this block. Next slide. So here you can see the ground plan comparison study showing this building, the proposed building, along with other buildings on this block and across the street. The building footprint and placement create a consistent rhythm along the street front, meeting guideline 4.37. Next slide. The 2-story structures features a base, middle, and top layout that is consistent with the historic context, and the building's base is scaled to human proportions, as well as the design incorporating scaling elements such as foundation heights, floor-to-floor heights that are consistent with the district patterns. And we're citing guidelines and standards 4.1, 4.2, 4.8, 4.11, 4.32, 4.34, 4.35, and 4.36. Next slide. The building is simple in its form. It's recognizable as modern infill and incorporates scaling elements that relate to the district's context. And we're citing guidelines and standards 4.3, 4.7, 4.10, 4.22, 4.25, 4.26, 4.30, 4.42, and 4.43. Final slide. So I did make an update to the motion. I've highlighted what I've changed in red here just for clarification. Staff is recommending approval of the application, and on the screen is the proposed motion.
Thank you, Jesse. Commissioners, do you have any questions? All right, we're ready to hear from the applicant.
Chelsea again. So, as mentioned, we're zoned for CX and 5 stories, 70 feet tall. And, I think from, a project, design, massing perspective, that was never something that we had ever entertained. I think 1 or 2 stories was all that we were interested in to keep the kind of Main Street character. Even our facade, on Welton, trying to, follow a lot of the similar design strategies of the neighboring buildings in the area. As mentioned, we have, punched openings, equally spaced, on the 2nd floor, and then, storefronts on the 1st floor with a lot of, strong horizontal elements. I think there was a staff comment and some of our feedback that, you know, the design as is right now feels a little replicative. And I think that, you know, we don't disagree. I think that it is, you know, a pretty traditional design. I think through the design phase, or, you know, moving the design forward, and especially in our design details package, we hope to kind of push these details forward to have it feel a little bit more modern. I think that this area has, you know, a lot of character and vibrancy. There's a lot of color and interesting detailing, and I think that we're very interested in kind of pulling that in, especially to the details of the facade. However, at the moment, we're really just focusing on proportions, alignments, making sure from, you know, the mass and scale that it really feels like, you know, it fits. Because, you know, as we mentioned, you know, the goal was to use the existing building, but unfortunately that is just not feasible. And I think, you know, at the core of this project, it's really, you know, about the community, also in terms of the uses. You know, on the first floor, you know, there's a bar, restaurant, you know, it's a gathering space for people in the neighborhood. And then up on level 2 will be an events venue. And that events venue space is intentionally very flexible in its design and very open for any kind of, you know, event to take place there. You know, that could be anywhere from, you know, receptions or community meetings, or let's say someone, you know, wants to have an event there for their business. So I think, you know, it's unfortunate that we can't use the existing building and the existing facade, but I think we're really doing our best to try to have something that really complements the existing, you know, neighboring structures and, you know, brings value to this really, you know, kind of intricate and kind of complex, you know, historic district. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, so you said you're focused on, I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
You recognize me?
Yeah, sorry.
I just started talking.
No, you're fine.
Sorry, everybody. You said you're focused on sort of mass and also, you know, the datum lines. And it draws my attention to the cornice line that is sort of established by the taller buildings on the street. That as you look at the building are to the left and the right, and the eyebrows of the proposed windows line up with the cornices, and then you have a raised cornice on this facade. It just seems like a lot of brick. And maybe you could speak to that a little bit, what the methodology was, what the thinking is, and then how that might evolve in this next phase if you're proposing to change it at all.
Can I just clarify, do you mean a lot of brick above the windows or
Everywhere.
everywhere? Okay.
What is specific, yeah, you're right, above especially, there's a mass there.
Absolutely. I mean, to start off, yes, that is something that we are working through detail wise. We have discussed, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself with design details, but that we've looked at, you know, post submitting this, looked at adding, you know, additional different materials potentially at the cornice. We've been studying a bunch of different cornice detailing to kind of address that. But really what's driving this is we have a 16-foot 404, really to kind of maintain the quality of space in both, you know, the bar, restaurant, and an events venue upstairs. So that's really what's kind of driving a lot of this. And, you know, trying to find alignments with the windows so that way they fit, you know, relatively in the center of the facade. I think, yeah, we're still studying the details there of what that cornice could be to start to eat up some of that brick.
Yeah, I just, the way it is at this stage, I have concerns.
I would add that the old building had all brick above the windows, by the way. And it was quite a big mass.
It wasn't 2 stories.
No,
No.
And there-
I don't disagree. I don't
Yeah.
disagree. We're looking through that, yeah.
So,
All right, any other questions for the applicants? All right. Any staff recap? No. Okay. All right, we can discuss now. Chris or Nick, would you like to?
We'll step right there and.
Yeah.
I just, following up on what I said, I'm interested to hear what other people think. And if that's something that we should, as a group, be concerned about at this phase or this application. So I put it to the group.
I mean, I can understand your concerns as far as seeing it as it is now. But it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for the design detail phase to address that, such as like corbelling that we see on the older building that will be demolished, as one way to kind of minimize that big eyebrow or forehead, maybe. So I seems like as far as scale goes, that it's still appropriate and fitting within the context.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's just it's a miss. It's an obvious miss when you look at the datum lines that strike across the building. It's a complete whiff to the context. So
To not have
hopefully
more articulation.
to not have the cornice at that level instead of the eyebrows of the window.
Mhm.
And then if you need windows above, you can do that. I mean, and then it makes the facade more lacy. I mean, this is detail, but just the way it is now, it ignores its context, not the overall mass,
Mhm.
just where that datum line comes across. And so I don't know where we have that discussion, in the next phase or now.
I was just gonna say, looking at the streetscape comparison, I think I wouldn't fully agree that it's like totally alien to the context. There's this two-story building to the left that has a really massive brick, kind of piece above.
Yeah, but just
that.
the red line.
So, no, I
It's not at
understand
the
that.
eyebrow of the windows
But I
to
guess,
that
yeah,
building. It's at the cornice level of that
Yeah.
building.
and I think the
So
heights are
That's the
something-
line I'm concerned about having consistency on, because it's continued to the building to the right as you look at the building, the proposed building. Those line up. This is above those, that cornice line.
So, I mean, in some ways, it seems like you are actually more concerned with the scale in a way. Because of, I mean, we've heard that there's, what they're trying to accomplish as far as ceiling height in both levels.
No, just let me be real clear.
Okay.
That cornice right here.
Yeah.
Should be down at that red line.
So you're saying that.
Because it's there and it's there.
So.
It right here, it comes up. So, and this is the eyebrow
Yeah,
for,
I understand.
yeah, so that's all I'm concerned about. It's just an obvious miss to me. I've written CCNRs for, 11 million square foot developments, and cornice lines are important as it relates to especially like neoclassical design. And so for me to see this as a character feature to the street without paying homage to that is a missed opportunity, I think.
We couldn't see what you were pointing at. Could you try to describe it just a little bit
I
better?
think it's,
Yeah. Do you have a broader view? Yeah, so you see this red line? That's at the eyebrow for the proposed windows, right? It's at the cornice for this two-story building. It's at the cornice level for this two-story building. And so this cornice level, or the decorative cornice, is above that. The mass all matches. It's just, it's kind of a whiff to not pay homage to the cornice line that seems to be an opportunity to tie the whole street together. That's it's an aesthetic thing. It's subjective, but it's pretty obvious to me that it should be that way. And I think once you do that, I think it will help the mass. And if you need windows above that line, you can put a clear story that matches the window below. But just that line is that important, I think, to me. It architecturally, it doesn't fit its context. It's just out of place. And it should contrast, I get it, it should be modern, perhaps, but that's a simple one.
So you're
And-
going 4.8? Just needs to.
Oh, the
tie that
justification?
to, scale pattern.
I,
Just trying to
yeah,
prioritize that.
yeah, 4.8, sure.
Well, I think within that critique, I mean, I think it's a thoughtful critique. But I think looking at the streetscape, I'm also seeing that, we're jumping around between 1 and 2 story buildings. We've got buildings of very different styles, and I think that given that both, it's a fairly, there's some diversity architecturally, there's some sort of themes here, but there's a lot of kind of diversity in how those themes are executed from one building to another. And to the fact that, as we talked about with the demolition application, this is a district that is not designated for its architecture. I think that having a little bit of flexibility around, it's maybe the internal needs driving this. If it feels to me like it's hitting the themes very well of this block that it's on, and sort of slightly playing around with the heights, but like really modestly. I would say the windows, for example, are scaled almost precisely the same as the windows, and second story buildings surrounding it, and they're tying into lines, to cornice lines, but in different places, and so there's a nod to it, but kind of different locations. So I think, like you said, it's a subjective.
Yeah, it is very subjective. I don't know why you call attention to it with a red line if it's not gonna if it's not gonna pay homage to what the red line is.
They're trying to, the headers of the windows are trying to align with cornice, not the cornice with the cornice.
I understand.
Yeah, but you're
it's-
saying that the cornice and cornice should align, but they shouldn't, because that's not the intent.
But the intent, in my view, given the
You're not the
context,
designer.
no, but I'm an interpreter of the guidelines,
Right.
right? Just like you.
Yeah, but our intent is to interpret the guidelines, not to design the building.
I'm not trying to convince you.
Right.
You just keep asking me to articulate my view.
Right.
Thank you. Any other comments or either about that particular issue or any of the other guidelines and how this meets or does not?
In terms of just looking at the scale and height of the building, as far as a 2-story building goes, as being obviously a new addition to the streetscape, it does seem that the height is within the guidelines, and I think generally responds really well to the adjacent 2-story buildings. So in terms of that being a new language on this site, that feels fitting. I do agree with Nick of the now that we don't have that up, the 4.8, I think it was the patterning or I'll use patterning, but it does seem that there's kind of an architectural language and pattern happening on this street with the alignments and potentially some other architectural elements or features. Not wanting to combine this with the demo submission that we reviewed, but obviously us knowing that this building has some brickwork and interesting features to it. I think in phase 2 of submission, maybe there are some of those things that Nick pointed out that can be captured in the materiality, and knowing the team has some more design process to go through. I think in terms of the massing and scale, this feels appropriate and meets the guidelines. So if there is more finesse of the actual design, I'll be curious to see kind of how that evolves the next phase.
Thank you, Bree. Any other comments? All right, we do have a recommended motion for approving this phase 1. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll go for it.
Okay.
I move to approve application number 2025-COA-1120 for phase 1, mass, form, and context for the new building at 2727-2729 Welton Street as per design guidelines and standards 4.1 through 4.3, 4.7, 4.8, 4.10, 4.11, 4.22, 4.25, 4.26, 4.30, 4.32, 4.34 through 4.37, 4.42, 4.43, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nick is opposing, and I believe that's all of us voting, so there's no abstaining. So the motion does pass with a quorum of 5, approving this phase 1. All right, we will see you for phase 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have, let's see, one business item that we will hear from Para about. Business items do require a vote and action from the commission, and we can include a presentation from either an applicant or staff. In this case, we will hear from staff for agenda item 999 South Colorado Boulevard, certificate of demolition eligibility application. Thanks. Oh, and Rusty is joining us again, so thanks for hanging out there.
Hello. So we're here to talk about a certificate of demolition eligibility for the property at 999 South Colorado Boulevard. So I want to give you just a little bit of background on what this is, because I'm not sure a lot of you guys have seen this. So we review all demolitions citywide. However, developers can choose to do a certificate of demolition eligibility, which is an application that goes through basically the exact same process as a demolition application that we review. However, a demolition is only good for 3 years, whereas a certificate of demolition eligibility, or a CDE, is good for 5 years. So it's oftentimes used during a transaction for someone who's looking to buy a property. They do a certificate of demolition eligibility before the property is purchased to ensure that they can move forward with their plans to redevelop the site. Next slide, please. So during the process, we review the property following the same criteria that we use for all of the demolitions that we review. For the very rare percentage that meet the requirements of landmark designation and have the potential to be a landmark property, we post public notice on the property. We put signage up, we put notices on the website, we email registered neighborhood organizations within 200 feet. If during the time that it's posted, which is 21 days, with the goal of just alerting the community that this property that is the potential to be a landmark is up for demolition, 3 residents of Denver can submit what is which is called a notice of intent to file a designation application. If that notice is filed, it extends the posting period to a total of 60 days. During that time, a third-party facilitator brings together the property owner, in this instance, also the potentially new buyer, the community members, and then we as city staff attend as well. And the facilitator can bring in anyone else that he feels is appropriate to help with the conversation. So like right now, for this particular case, I'm bringing in some of my rezoning colleagues to give us some clarity on zoning options. We are reaching the end of the 60-day time period. However, there is some level of like, hey, we want to continue this. We're not sure kind of where we want to go with this. So next slide, please. The Landmark Preservation Commission under 30-7 allows for an extension of time limits. It needs to be done by the mutual consent of the commission, the owner, and the applicant. And then next slide, please. So for this particular case, the owners, the notice of intent, which are the applicants, have agreed to extend the timeline. So as you can see here, we received the application on October 24th. We posted notice on November 10th. 3 community members came forward on November 17th, and we've been holding multiple stakeholder meetings between now and then, between November and December. The deadline is for this Friday, January 9th. All parties have agreed to extend it to March 3rd to allow for continued discussion and consultation. So they are coming to ask for the mutual consent of the commission as well to extend this deadline. And then if all 3 do, the deadline will be extended to March 3rd. And so we are making a recommendation on the next slide for you to, oh, I'm sorry. Here are just a couple of examples of the letters. So the one on the left from Kevin Shaw is the representative for the owner. And then the one on the right is one of the folks who did the notice of intent. And then you have copies in front of you of all of the letters that everyone signed to extend it to March 3rd. Sorry, so the next slide is the recommendation for you to approve by mutual consent, and it would extend the deadline to March 3rd. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Kara. Any questions? All right, I think then we can move to the motion. Okay.
I move to approve an extension of the 60-day time limit in the DRMC section 30-6 1C III, Roman numeral 3, for the proposed issuance of a certificate of demolition eligibility for 999 South Colorado Boulevard to March 3rd, 2026.
Thank you, Bree. Do I have a second? Thank you, Emily. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Kara. All right, and then we do have one discussion item, hearing from Amy about mission treatments. Discussion items are just informational items. They are not requiring a vote, and we'll just hear from staff introducing the discussion information, and then we'll discuss amongst ourselves.
Hi, I'm Amadon, representing Landmark staff. We would like to propose that in the upcoming year, we take the opportunity from time to time when there's a light agenda to do mini trainings. We don't necessarily have the opportunity to schedule retreats and sort of larger training times with you all because everyone's busy and sometimes those things can be hard to schedule. We didn't do one in 2025. And so instead of doing nothing, we want to try to fit in what we can manage. And we wanted to make a proposal to you all and see what you thought of the idea of just occasional 15-minute discussions when possible on topics that you could help us identify. We wanted to set appropriate expectations of what this might be like. You know, it's not going to be the most polished, glamorous presentation in the world necessarily, but maybe a few slides. The most professional advice we can give you for topics again that you might identify or things we've heard about. Sometimes it'll just be interesting preservation news, or maybe someone has some expertise. Maybe Chris, sometime you could tell us something about the latest technology on something. No pressure on anyone.
I'll talk about cornices.
We just want to throw out the idea if any of us have information to share, or we want to talk about how to make a motion or something that you feel like we are assuming you know and you don't know. So we threw out a couple of ideas of some potential topics that we could talk about ahead, like your interaction with other city regulations like zoning. What are you supposed to think about setback requirements and things like that? What does the permitting process look like? What happens to someone after they get an approval? What happens when someone needs an inspection? What happens with some of the enforcement issues that are happening outside of this room? How do design guidelines work? How are you supposed to balance when one guideline when another one conflicts with it? Things like that. So we wanted to, again, throw this idea out to you, see what you thought. These would occur at the end of meetings. They will be on camera. We'd be open to a discussion Q&A with you afterwards. We are already planning to hold one of these as a test at the next meeting to talk about the designation process, because we think you probably would like to know a little bit more about that. Our February 3rd agenda is quite light, and so we thought that was an opportunity. But with that, I'd just like to open it up to hear what you all think, and if you have any ideas about training that would help.
I think it makes sense. Question, the next meeting, is that when we're gonna review the reformatted guidelines and the chapter 2, or that's been punted?
That, I think we had updated you already. We have had some technical difficulties in the reformatting of that document, and we are now looking at February 17th is our goal. And even that isn't absolutely locked in, but that's what we're expecting.
Thanks.
We have to file it 20 days in advance with the clerk and recorder. As soon as we file it, though, I would send it to you also. You could begin reviewing it. That's 20 days in advance, so it wouldn't just be a week notice for that document.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the 5 points discussion today was really informative. So like any like background on like how some of this stuff got developed and to help us inform our decisions when we make those, I think is really useful.
So unique situations, unique historic districts, things like that.
Yeah, like maybe, any of that kind of like background on how they kind of came about, or what makes them unique, or any, like things that you guys have to deal with that are special or unique.
Also the integration of general city guidelines and which one takes precedent, or like how they should integrate between district specific and city.
And maybe just some high level discussion about purview of landmark versus the building department as it relates to materials and methods in buildings, because I think we talk a lot about materials and methods in this group, where it's their purview in a lot of instances. So I would like to understand that better.
Yeah, I think that would be a great topic. I'm just thinking of some recent projects where there was some clear like material degradation that we kind of weren't in a position to direct them on, but clearly has, major implications as far as how successful this project will ultimately be. So I think that would be great. I'll just say that I think I might be the only commissioner that was around when we had our last retreat, and that was very helpful. So I'm glad to have these come back as maybe more accessible to the whole commission as kind of bite-sized things.
Much more convenient.
Yeah.
And I think too, as you mentioned, like the landmarking process being an example of kind of a process that's internal, but also obviously as a public element to it too. And so many of us being practitioners, we've probably been in some part of that process, but I know I personally haven't done a designation or a nomination with Landmark. So I'm more curious of like your kind of process that happens internally and just hearing more about that. So I think that doing an overview of process would be good because it would let us see more of like the holistic picture of what that all looks like.
This could be a rolling conversation as the year goes along. You can make suggestions and but yeah, I think this is a good chance for us to provide some training without waiting for that big moment when we're somehow going to accomplish everything, and that's working very well, so.
But did I understand right that this has to be, the topics have to be published for 20 days in advance?
No,
No,
this
okay.
in regards to, yeah.
The rewrite of the guidelines.
Got it.
Any retreats are considered public meetings as it's a quorum of the meeting. So it's very hard for us to like plan a retreat. Because it's considered public meetings, we gotta find time to do the public meetings. I don't remember the last time we did the retreat, honestly, I think it was 2022. It's been a while.
It's been a few years.
We haven't sat down and done it because it's very difficult to do and we just would like to do something more manageable with y'all.
I would also suggest, while other things would take precedence, especially the more technical and practical things, that this could be used as an opportunity to inform the commission more lengthily on other projects that you're doing in tandem, you know, such, I mean, I've read through a lot of the Indigenous culture one, but, you know, kind of, and it also would be a way to have that presented to the public. Because I know you guys are doing a lot of work that is not unseen by most.
Throw anything else out? Otherwise, we'll just always be open to ideas. Crystal?
I just wanted to note that I think we discussed with our other team here that they would move the landmark designation process to the 17th too. Did you guys say that this morning?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
No,
gonna
we'll
move that
get to
too. Okay.
My bad.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda for today, so I will close our meeting at 2:36. Thank you.
Going anywhere.
Yeah.